Good afternoon, Chris Potter. Today is January 25th, 2017. Today's presentation, why is Venus getting so bright? A physicist's thoughts? Let's begin, shall we? Venus is the second planet from the Sun in the solar system. Since Earth is the third planet from the Sun, Venus's orbit is right next to Earth's. Venus is also the planet that comes closest to Earth, as its orbit is closer to Earth's orbit than Mars' orbit, the fourth planet from the Sun. Figure 1 shows an image of Venus taken by the Hubble Space Telescope. Venus has a dense atmosphere and is covered in clouds. Figure 1, image of Venus taken by Hubble, showing its dense cloud cover. Now, it has been observed in recent months that Venus seems to be getting extremely bright. In fact, it's supposed to be getting brighter as it is now, getting closer to Earth. Venus will be at its closest distance to the Sun between March 25th and March 28th of 2017. Figure 7 shows a solar system scope view of the solar system on March 27, 2017, where it can be seen that Earth's and Venus's position are very close. Figure 2, solar system scope view of Earth and Venus's position on March 27th, 2017. But amateur astronomers from around the world are reporting that Venus is getting brighter than they have ever seen. Figure 3 below shows the relative size of the Moon and Venus from a Steve Olson and R. Wayne Steiger video, showing that Venus is much larger than expected. In fact, Venus seems to be about half the size of the Moon, as indicated by the yellow line in Figure 2, with about the same length as the diameter of Venus. Figure 3, a recent image of Venus and the Moon and the sky. Venus seems to be about half the size of the Moon, as indicated by the yellow line, with the same length as Venus's diameter in the image. So, what should we expect the relative sizes of the Moon and Venus to be? Well, the Moon is about 27% of the size of the Earth, while Venus is 95% of the Earth. The Moon reflects 12% of the sunlight that falls on it, while Venus reflects 70% because of its heavy cloud cover. Also, the Moon is REM, which equals 380,000 kilometers, or 3.8 times 10 to the 5th kilometers from the Earth, while Venus, at its closest distance to Earth, is REV, or 38 million kilometers, or 3.8 times 10 to the 7th kilometers from the Earth. Now, we would expect the sizes to be inversely proportional to the two objects' distance from the Earth, right? Now, we should expect the sizes to be inversely proportional to the two objects' distance from the Earth, like I just said. Thus, to get the relative size between the two objects, we need to multiply the ratio of their relative size with the ratio of their respective reflective ability, and then multiply by the inverse of their relative distances from the Earth. So, an equation for the expected ratio between the Moon's size and Venus's size would be RAPPM over RAPPV, which equals 0.27 over 0.95 times 0.12 over 0.70 times REV times REM, which equals 4.9, where RAPPM is the apparent size of the Moon and RAPPV is the apparent size of Venus. So the simple calculation tells us that the Moon should be about 5 times larger than Venus. But we see that from Figure 3 that the Moon is only twice the size. Also, this is when Venus has not yet reached its closest position to the Earth, so we can conclude that indeed Venus is much brighter than expected. Now, why would this be happening? Well, Venus is a bit different than the other rocky planets in the solar system, as it does not produce its own magnetic field, and therefore its own magnetosphere. The magnetosphere is a bubble produced by a planet's magnetic field, which deflects the charged particles in the sun's solar wind. However, Venus has an induced magnetosphere, which is about 10 times smaller than Earth's magnetosphere. Venus's induced magnetosphere is caused by the solar wind particles ionizing its atmosphere It's atmosphere, excuse me, it's ionosphere, and inducing a magnetic field as a result. This induced magnetic field isolates and partially protects Venus's lower atmosphere from the solar wind, as it is able to deflect solar wind particles around the planet. The shape of Venus's induced magnetic field is shaped like a comet's tail. The name is appropriate because a comet develops a tail and coma in the same way through an electrical charge exchange between the solar wind and the comet. Figure 4 below illustrates the difference between the Earth's magnetosphere and Venus's magnetosphere. Figure 4, illustration of the difference between Earth's magnetosphere and Venus's induced magnetosphere that is like a comet's tail. Now, the fact that Venus does not produce its own magnetic field suggests that it does not have a hot liquid core inside that conducts electricity like the Earth has. Venus has a very dense and hot atmosphere, and there are lots of craters on its surface that have not eroded, and so they look like they were recently created. It is believed that craters are caused by asteroid impacts, but according to the electric theory of the universe, craters are caused by electric discharges between charged objects passing close to each other. Comets have been found to have lots of these craters as well. Venus Venus also rotates about its axis in the opposite direction to most planets. This suggests that Venus might not be a natural solar system object, but rather a captured object. Since Venus has so many characteristics similar to comets, it's possible that Venus was at one time a comet that settled in a stable orbit within the solar system. Now, the fact that Venus is much brighter than normal can be attributed to two possible factors. The first is the ionization of Venus's atmosphere that has greatly increased as a result of extra charged particles in the solar system due to the presence of possibly two extra stars, such as, for instance, several brown dwarf stars. In the 1960s, microwave radiation emitted from Venus's ionosphere were detected, and it is possible that the increasing ionization in recent years has led to the emission of visible light as well. Venus has lightning. Even though it does not have much water, the lightning has to be caused by electric discharges from the upper ionized atmosphere to the surface of the planet. The second factor is that Venus's orbit may have been perturbed by an object passing close to it. Thus, it's possible that Venus's orbit is now even closer to Earth's than before, which would potentially cause Venus to come much closer to the Earth than it usually does. Then, if Venus comes so close to the Earth so that the two atmospheres almost touch, its history as a possible comet makes this event very likely to be dangerous for our planet. It is not likely that the planets would collide because planets will eventually repel each other once they equalize their potentials. But the potentials are equalized through electric discharges that would destroy much of the surface of the Earth, which would become littered with craters and discharges. In conclusion, something is definitely happening to Venus. It could be increasing ionization of its ionosphere or a perturbed orbit that is causing it to move closer to the Earth. If it is possible, as well, that Venus is experiencing both an increased ionization of its ionosphere and a perturbed orbit. Now, I want to draw your attention to James McCanney's work, Surviving Planet X's Passage. I've often said that Venus was the disco star. James started his work in 1980. I believe Surviving Planet X's Passage was released in the early 80s. Around 97, he made two pretty much bold statements in the documents here. I'll provide the link. That basically Venus is a comet that turns into the friggin' disco star when Planet X comes in and then starts showering the Earth with red rocks because it becomes destroyer. Venus. He also said that there would be a psyop on the internet. This is back in 1997. That's 20 years ago. So I've been holding on to this information for the right time, and I think that this is probably the right time to mention it. release it. The other thing that is noticed about these ancient cities and communities is their new calendar tracking devices always were keenly aware of tracking the planet Venus. Today we know Venus is the morning and evening star, but to the ancients it presented a terrible reality. Venus was a massive comet that was originally captured by the planet Jupiter. It has been known by many names. During the time that it moved into the plane of planets, first devastating the water planet Mars. In that encounter, Venus, the huge comet, sucked the atmospheres and oceans from our sister's planet, and the ancients witnessed and recorded this event. As Venus, the comet, moved into the Earth's atmosphere, the area of Earth's orbit around the sun, the ancients experienced two separate close Earth passages that devastated Earth and its inhabitants. We know from the Mayan calendar that these two events occurred approximately 57 years apart, and at least one of these close encounters caused the calendar to change. It also caused a movement on the north celestial pole, a physical pole shift, and caused extensive earthquakes and volcanic activity. 75% of all species went extinct, yet man survived. As Venus, the comet, had its orbit induced by the comet tail drag, the ancients watched Venus very closely with their celestial tracking calendars. The planet-sized comet nucleus eventually became the planet Venus. The Mayan religion and codex states that the plumed serpent god of the night sky, Quetzalcoatl, roamed the sky in a lawless way, and his heart, the planet-sized comet nucleus, eventually became the planet Venus. There's a rumor in the Mormon church that Quetzalcoatl is actually Jesus Christ. Modern science rejected the fact and has since the 50s, etc. Okay? This is the part that I thought was creepy about the PSYOP that I've referred to, because it's this document that I've been referring to from James McCanney. And this was shared to me from someone really, really cool. With little time and resources to prepare, there would be a certain high casualty rates among the populace. With even a small level of preparation and information, the survival rate could be much greater. In addition to not telling the public, government officials have introduced complex misinformation campaigns meant to divert the public's attention from the real issues. Some of these are in the form of internet websites to create cult-like crazy groups that are promoting Planet X dialogue. From people who claim to talk to aliens or get information from the dead. They're actually referring to Nancy Lieder. It is expected that 95% of the public will get their first information regarding Planet X from misinformation articles, especially crafted for the news media and internet media, and referring to this information campaigns noted above. The goal has been to make the entire topic sound crazy and equate it to previous past scares such as Y2K, alignments of the planets, and other government contrived stories, Another effort has been to admit some other made-up story about an Earth disaster to gain the public attention, but then to place it thousands or millions of years into the future. What's up with Venus? We should keep an eye on it. We should keep an eye out for any psychological operations. We should be keeping an eye for both. James McCanney work we shouldn't disregard. That's it. Chris Potter, thanks again and have a good day.